Abosed knelt on the cold concrete floor of the cramped kitchen, her knees aching as she scrubbed the blackened pot with worn fingers. The harsh lye soap burned her cracked hands, but she dared not complain. At 19, she had learned that silence was her safest companion in this house that had never truly felt like home. Abosed! The sharp voice of Mama Kemi cut through the humid Lagos air like a machete. "Come here this instant!" Setting down the pot with trembling hands, Abosed quickly dried her palms on her faded wrapper and hurried to the sitting room. Mama Kemi sat in her favorite plastic chair, her considerable frame draped in expensive Ankara fabric that seemed to mock Abosed's threadbare clothes. The woman who had taken her in 12 years ago after her parents died in a car accident had never let her forget the debt of that so-called kindness. "Sit down," Mama Kemi commanded, not bothering to look up from painting her nails a garish shade of red. "I have news that will change your worthless life." Abosed perched on the edge of a wooden stool, her back straight, despite the exhaustion that had become her constant companion. Years of fetching water, cooking, cleaning, and caring for Mama Kemi's 3 biological children had worn grooves into her spirit, but somehow a small flame of hope still flickered within her. "Mr. Babajide came to see me today," Mama Kemi continued, blowing on her nails. "You know, the man who lives in that small house near the market, the one who walks with crutches." Abosed's stomach clenched. She knew of Babajide, had seen him occasionally at the market, a quiet man in his 30s who moved slowly but with dignity despite his disability. Some said he'd been born with weak legs, others whispered of an accident in his youth. What she remembered most was his gentle eyes and the way he always greeted everyone with respect, even when children sometimes stared or adults whispered. "He wants a wife," Mama Kemi announced with the casual tone she might use to discuss the weather. "And I told him you were available. The bride price isn't much. He's poor and crippled after all. But it will be enough to finally rid this household of your burden." The words hit Abosed like physical blows. Marriage. To a stranger. A man she'd barely spoken to. Chosen. Not for love or compatibility, but as a transaction to remove her from a home where she'd never been wanted. "Mama Kemi, please," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I know nothing about marriage. I know nothing about him." The older woman's laugh was harsh and cold. "What is there to know? You'll cook, clean, and bear his children just as you do here, except it will be his problem to feed you. The wedding is in 2 weeks. Consider yourself lucky. Few men would take damaged goods like you." The market buzzed with its usual chaos of vendors calling out prices, motorcycles weaving through narrow paths, and the rich aroma of spiced foods mingling with dust and exhaust. Abosed moved through the familiar maze with practiced efficiency, Mama Kemi's shopping list clutched in her sweaty palm. With only 1 week until her forced wedding, each mundane task felt weighted with finality. She was examining tomatoes at Mama Folake's stall when she felt someone's presence beside her. Turning slightly, she found herself looking into the calm, intelligent eyes of Babajide. Up close, she could see the premature lines around his eyes that spoke of pain endured quietly, but also something else. A kindness that seemed to emanate from deep within. "Good afternoon, Abosede," he said softly, his voice carrying the careful politeness of someone accustomed to being dismissed. "I hope I'm not disturbing you." She dropped her gaze immediately, as Mama Kemi had trained her to do around men. "Good afternoon, sir. Please," he said gently, "just Babajide. We are to be... That is, I thought perhaps we should speak before..." He trailed off, seeming as uncomfortable with the arrangement as she was. Mama Folake, sensing drama, busied herself, rearranging her already perfect display of peppers while clearly listening to every word. "I know this situation is not of your choosing," Babajide continued, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "It is not entirely of mine either. But since it seems we are both caught in circumstances beyond our control, Perhaps we could at least know each other as people rather than as obligations. Abosti risked a glance at his face, surprised by the lack of entitlement she saw there. Where she had expected the demanding nature of a man claiming his purchased bride, she found only a quiet resignation mixed with something that might have been hope. "I don't know what to say," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Perhaps we could start with simple things," he suggested, shifting his weight on his crutches to ease the strain on his arms. "I know you enjoy reading. I've seen you with books when you fetch water from the well near my house. What do you like to read?" The question caught her off guard. No one had ever asked about her reading, something she did in stolen moments. With old books she found or borrowed. Mama Kemi considered it a waste of time for someone in Abosede's position. "Stories," she said hesitantly, then with growing confidence. "I like stories about people who overcome difficulties, about second chances." For the first time, Babajide smiled, and the transformation was remarkable. The weariness lifted from his features, revealing a handsomeness that had been hidden beneath years of struggle and social rejection. "I have many books," he said. "Perhaps, after we are married, you might enjoy reading them. I work as a bookkeeper for several small businesses in the area. Numbers and books. They have been my companions for many years." "You work?" The surprise in her voice was unmistakable. Mama Kemi had spoken of him as a burden, a man dependent on family charity. His smile faded slightly. "People assume many things about me because of these." He gestured to his crutches. "But a mind that works well can overcome what the body lacks. I earn enough to live simply, though I understand that is part of why Mama Kemi agreed to this arrangement. She believes she is doing you a favor by marrying you to someone who cannot expect too much." In that moment, Abosede saw clearly the cruelty of the assumptions others made about both of them, that she was worthless, damaged goods, and he was a desperate man who should be grateful for whatever he could get. "I don't think you are what she believes you are," she said quietly, surprising herself with her boldness. "Nor are you what she claims you are," he replied. The small church was filled with curious neighbors and a handful of relatives who had come more to witness spectacle than to celebrate love. Abosede sat on a wooden bench in the tiny room behind the altar, staring at her reflection in a cracked mirror. The white dress, borrowed from Mama Kemi's eldest daughter, hung loosely on her slight frame, and the shoes were a size too large, but she had never looked more beautiful. For the first time in years, her hair had been professionally styled, and someone had given her a small pot of lip balm that made her feel almost glamorous. Mama Kemi bustled in, her own outfit far more elaborate than the bride's, as if to ensure no one forgot who held the power in this arrangement. "Stop staring at yourself like you're some sort of princess," she snapped. "Remember, this marriage is charity, both his and mine. Don't get ideas above your station." But for once, her harsh words bounced off Abosede like rain on a well-oiled roof. In the past week, she and Babajide had managed 3 more brief conversations at the market and by the well. Each time, he had treated her not as a burden to be borne, but as a person worthy of attention and respect. He had told her about his work, his small but tidy house, his love of evening radio programs and weekend football matches. She had shared her dreams of perhaps learning to sew properly someday, her worry about leaving the only home she had known despite its hardships, and her secret hope that marriage might offer something better than mere survival. "It's time," announced Pastor Adebayo, poking his gray head through the doorway. The elderly man had known Abosede since childhood and had always been kind to her. Today, his eyes held a warmth that suggested he saw more promise in this union than others did. Walking down the short aisle, Abosede was surprised to see Babajide waiting not with the resigned expression of a man accepting damaged goods, but with genuine anticipation. He wore a simple but well-pressed suit, and his hair was freshly cut. Despite his crutches, he stood with dignity, and when their eyes met, He offered her an encouraging smile. The ceremony was brief but meaningful. Pastor Adebayo spoke about the unexpected ways God works in people's lives, about how circumstances that seem like endings can become beautiful beginnings. When Baba Jide took her hand to place the simple gold band on her finger, his touch was gentle and warm. Do you, Baba Jide, take Abosede to be your wife, to love and cherish her, in sickness, and in health, for richer or poorer, for as long as you both shall live. I do, he said clearly, his eyes never leaving her face. And I promise to honor her as the gift she is. The words were not part of the standard vows, but they made Abosede's heart race in a way she had never experienced. When it was her turn, she looked into his kind face and found herself meaning the words more than she had expected. I do, she whispered. Then more strongly, I do. As they walked out of the church together, she realized that for the first time in 12 years, she was not walking behind someone or being sent somewhere against her will. She was walking beside someone who had chosen her, and whom she was beginning to choose in return. The house was small but immaculate, with 2 rooms, a tiny kitchen, and a bathroom that actually had running water, a luxury Abose had not enjoyed at Mama Kemi's. Baba Jide had prepared for her arrival with touching care. Fresh sheets on the bed, flowers in a jar on the small table, and a shelf cleared for whatever belongings she might have brought. The reality that she owned almost nothing seemed less shameful here than it had felt at Mama Kemi's, where her lack of possessions was constantly highlighted. This room can be yours, Baba Jide said, gesturing to the smaller of the 2 rooms. I understand this arrangement was not your choice, and I want you to feel you have your own space while we learn to know each other. His consideration moved her deeply. She had expected to be handed a list of duties and told where to sleep, as had always been her experience. Instead, he was offering her something she had never had: agency in her own life. Thank you, she said softly. But I wonder, might we talk sometimes? In the evenings, I mean. I enjoyed our conversations at the market. His face lit up with surprised pleasure. I would like that very much. I have supper at 6 after the evening news. You're welcome to join me, or I can prepare something separately if you prefer. I could cook, she offered quickly, falling back into the pattern of usefulness that had defined her existence. Only if you want to, he said gently. I've been preparing my own meals for 15 years. I'm not looking for a servant, Abosede. I'm hoping for a companion. The word hung in the air between them, foreign and precious. A companion, someone to share thoughts with, to plan small dreams alongside, to face life's challenges beside rather than behind. Over the following weeks, they developed routines that felt natural rather than imposed. Abosede discovered that Baba Jide was an excellent cook who had learned by necessity but had grown to enjoy the creativity it allowed. She contributed her skills with cleaning and organization, but also found herself learning from him how to balance a budget, how to negotiate with suppliers for his bookkeeping clients, how to see patterns in numbers that told stories about the businesses he served. Evenings became their favorite time. Baba Jide would tune in to his radio programs, news, music, and sometimes comedy shows that made them both laugh. Abosede would sit beside him with a book from his extensive collection, occasionally reading passages aloud that struck her as particularly beautiful or insightful. Sometimes they would discuss what they had heard or read, conversations that ranged from practical matters to philosophical questions neither had ever had the opportunity to explore before. You have a good mind, Baba Jide told her one evening, as they discussed a radio program about women's education. Have you ever thought about continuing your schooling? The question surprised her. Education had always seemed like something for other people. People with families who valued their potential rather than just their labor. I finished secondary school, she said. Mama Kemi allowed that because she thought it would make me More useful, but university... She shrugged, unable to even picture such a possibility. There are evening programs, he said thoughtfully, and correspondence courses. If it's something you wanted to pursue, we could find a way. For the first time since childhood, Abosde allowed herself to dream beyond mere survival. In this small, clean house with this kind, thoughtful man, she began to imagine a future where her mind could grow alongside her heart. What would you study? Babajide asked, genuinely curious. Literature, perhaps, or education. I think I would like to teach children someday, to help them see that stories and learning can open doors they didn't even know existed. Then we'll make it happen, he said simply, as if supporting her dreams was the most natural thing in the world. 6 months after their wedding, Abosede woke to the sound of Babajide moving carefully around the kitchen, preparing breakfast as he did every morning before she rose. But this morning was different. Today marked the day she had stopped thinking of him as the man she had been forced to marry and started thinking of him simply as her husband. The shift had been so gradual she couldn't pinpoint when it happened, but somewhere between his patient teaching of bookkeeping principles and his quiet support of her decision to enroll in evening classes, obligation had transformed into something deeper. She found him at the small table, account books spread before him, wearing the reading glasses that made him look distinguished. The morning light streaming through their clean windows caught the silver threads that were beginning to appear in his hair, and she realized with a start that she found him handsome, not despite his disability, but as a complete person whose worth had nothing to do with others' narrow definitions. "Good morning," she said, and was pleased when he looked up with the warm smile that had become as essential to her day as sunlight. "Good morning, wife," he replied, a term of endearment that had evolved from awkward formality to genuine affection. "I've prepared your favorite tea and there's a letter for you on the counter." The letter bore the seal of Lagos State University, and Abosede's hands trembled as she opened it. For 3 months, she had been attending evening classes, walking the 2 kilometers each way while Babajide worked late to ensure she had money for books and fees. Her professors had been impressed with her dedication and had encouraged her to apply for the degree program in education. "I've been accepted," she whispered, reading the letter twice to be sure. "Full acceptance into the education program, and they're offering a partial scholarship based on my entrance examination scores." Babajide set down his pen and looked at her with such pride that her heart swelled. "Of course they did. You're brilliant, Abosde. I've watched you master complex concepts in weeks that took me months to understand when I was learning bookkeeping." She moved to stand beside his chair, and without thinking, placed her hand on his shoulder. The simple touch felt natural now. Part of the intimacy they had built through shared meals, quiet conversations, and mutual respect. "None of this would be possible without you," she said. "You've given me more than a home, Babajide. You've given me a future." He covered her hand with his own, and she felt the calluses earned through years of supporting himself on crutches, marks of strength rather than weakness. "You've given me something, too," he said quietly. "For 15 years, I lived alone, convinced that my disability meant I would never have a family, never share my life with anyone who saw me as more than my limitations. You see me, Abosede, the real me. Because you let me see the real you," she replied, "and you saw the real me when everyone else saw only a burden to be discarded." That evening, as they sat listening to their favorite radio program, Abosede made a decision that had been forming in her heart for weeks. "Babajide," she said during a quiet moment between songs, "I want to move my things into your room, our room, if you would like that." He turned to look at her, and she saw in his eyes the same mixture of hope and vulnerability that she felt in her own heart. "Are you certain?" he asked gently. "I never want you to feel obligated." "I'm certain," she said, taking his hand. "What we have now, this partnership, this friendship, this home we've built together. I want to build on it. I want to try for the kind of marriage that exists by choice rather than circumstance. I love you, Abost, he said simply. I have for months, but I was afraid to say it, afraid you would feel pressured to return words you didn't mean. I love you too, she replied, and knew that both of them were surprised by how true and natural the words felt. I love your kindness, your intelligence, your strength, your dreams for our future. I love who I am when I'm with you. 1 year later, Abosede stood before her first class of primary school students, wearing the teaching certificate she had earned through evening study and weekend practicums. In the back of the classroom sat Babajid, who had insisted on witnessing this milestone, despite the difficulty of traveling to the school on his crutches. After the children had been dismissed and the other teachers had offered their congratulations, Abozid joined her husband outside under the shade of a mango tree. "Are you proud of me?" she asked, though she could see the answer in his glowing expression. "I'm proud of us," he said. "We've built something beautiful from what others saw as broken pieces." As they walked home together, she matching her pace to his, not out of obligation but out of love, Abosta reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. What had begun as a transaction between two people society had written off had become a love story that defied every assumption others had made about their worth. Their neighbors, who had once whispered about the poor cripple and the unwanted orphan, now spoke with respect about the teacher and the successful bookkeeper who had built a marriage of true partnership. But more importantly, they had proven to themselves that love could grow in the most unexpected circumstances, between two people brave enough to see past surface judgments to the treasures hidden within. In the small house that had become a true home, surrounded by books and dreams made real, they had found what everyone seeks but few are fortunate enough to discover: a love that transforms not just two individual lives, but creates something entirely new and beautiful from what the world had discarded as worthless.